Conversation about what happens back home after kids fly the coop, and I'm interested in your experience with this as well. How did you adjust to the empty house once your kids moved out? Was it a rather perilous time in your marriage or your partnership, as it is for many couples? Is it something you're dreading, if you have to be honest? So as our guests join us, I want you to talk to me a bit this morning about your own experience. Are you just dreading the time when the kids are gone off to career and college and it's you and your partner in the house again? Or is this a time that you have found is one for renewal and refreshment for your marriage or your partnership? Here's the phone number, 651-227-6000, 800-242-2828. You can go to the Daily Circuit page and tell us about it. Click on the Hour Show to comment, and you can go to my Twitter feed, @CarrieMPR, and talk to me about it there. Our guest, Lisa Stryker-Stossel, wrote a book about what happened to her family called Living Happily Ever After Separately, and that probably tells you a little bit about the story right there. She's with us from Virginia. Hi, Lisa. It's good to have you with us.
Hi, Carrie. Thanks for having me.
Dr. Eli Karam is family therapist and president of the Kentucky Association for Marriage and Family Therapy, and he's with us today. Is it from Louisville, Dr. Karam?
Good pronunciation. Yeah, Louisville, Kentucky.
All
nice
right.
to be here.
Good to have you with us as well. Do you find, Dr. Karam, that couples spend a lot of time thinking about what life is going to look like after the kids are gone, or is this something that they kind of put their heads in the sand about because they dread it in some ways?
You know, our culture is kind of necessitates thinking about some things in advance. Like most responsible adults, they plan some type of college fund for their kids. They plan their own investments. They look into the future on some things. But as far as the relational health of the couple, something that's so paramount to kind of the future, we find couples do very little planning until it's this time you wake up and you look across the bed and you see this person you know that's been with you every day for, sometimes up to 20 or 30 years. You don't know who that person is anymore because you have not nurtured the relationship. Perhaps you've been great co-parents, but you haven't been really working on the couple.
Yeah, I mean, they've been changing in other ways besides their role as parent, right? But easy to overlook that?
Sure. It's like when we think of divorce has two kind of spikes in the sense many divorces happen in the first 7 years, and we find, especially in the last 20 years, the other spike comes when that last child launches. It's when people have to look at their identity outside of being co-parents, outside of being professionals, and they have to assess, do I know this person sitting next to me? Have we nurtured the relationship? So that's why you see that spike. And just to show you how things have changed, in 1990, fewer than 1 in 10 individuals who divorced were 50 or older. Now, almost, a little over 20 years later, that has jumped to 1 in 4.
Wow.
By 2009, there's 600,000 divorces of people 50 or over. So this is a product of, most times we think of divorce, we think of chronic conflict and fighting, and we could all see it coming. Many of these empty nests, this stage of life, it's not for a lot of people about chronic conflict. It's about, as I said, looking at your partner and really being on out-of-date knowledge and not seeing your kind of worlds when you take the kids out of it interconnected. So the other change, the reason for that statistic, people look at it, whether it be people that study family life or a therapist like me, is that, people are living longer. And at midlife now, hundreds of years ago, if you were at 50 or 60, that was a good run. You maybe only had a couple of years left. Now people are living much longer, more productive life. So at midlife, if you are not fulfilled, if you don't have a sense of who you are and where you're going and a sense of how your partner fits into that, people are electing to kind of find happiness outside of the relationship. So the empty nest is one of those times, a critical decision point in any family life cycle.
I think that's such a good point. I mean, you want to think, do I really want to spend another 35 years with this dude? Because I could make it to 85. What's that look like? Let me grab a call here from Audrey in Effie. Hi, Audrey. What's your story with this?
Yeah, hi. Well, my children both grew up and moved out of the house, and my daughter, when she went off to college, I ended up getting a job in Antarctica. And
wow,
it was a whole change of scenery and a whole different lifestyle. And I think it was good for my husband. I mean, we've been married for 33 years now, but back then it was about 28 because it was a few years ago.
Yeah.
And it I really think it helps a lot because it sort of made us think about being so far apart. We've got to talk every single day, but being so far apart, we had to figure this out. And I think it really helped. And during the summers now, I spend my time at my cabin near Canada, and my husband comes up when he can, weekends or whatever. But I think it really has made a difference because we were able to both go in slightly different directions, and still come together and be very happy when we are together.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like that. It sounds like that distance really made you reevaluate.
Oh, absolutely. You think about it every day, and when you're 12,000 miles away, it makes a big difference.
All frozen in ice around you. Hey, Lisa, maybe the answer to your own situation was one of you going off to Antarctica for a while. You think that might have worked?
It would have been something to try.
So I saw a photograph of you and your family in the early 90s, 3 lovely daughters. You and your husband, you look like a pretty close family.
We were.
So what happened?
Well, I think our situation was a little bit atypical, Carrie. It wasn't so much that when the children left the nest that Emil, my husband, and I, looked at each other and thought, well, who is this person, that we hadn't really, taken the time and the trouble to stay connected. It was more that throughout our marriage there were some real baseline incompatibilities, and we really did try to fix those things. We were actually in marriage counseling for 3 years and worked very hard, and the marriage counseling did save our marriage, and it definitely made a huge improvement, but it didn't change those baseline incompatibilities. However, we did both really hold the welfare of the children as paramount, and so there was a very conscious decision to do whatever it took to keep the family together while the children were young. And then when the last one finished college, we were sort of facing each other. The nest was empty, and I was sort of getting to the point where I just didn't really want to do this anymore, just like, what you all were saying about this new gray divorce phenomenon where people, have put in their time, have paid their dues, and they're ready to move on to something a little bit more enjoyable. I was sort of headed in that direction until I realized that there were so many things that I really deeply valued about my husband, and that maybe I didn't have to discard this marriage. Maybe we could find a way to reinvigorate our relationship and essentially renew it by living apart so that we weren't in each other's faces and in each other's spaces all the time, had a little bit more breathing room, and could be a little bit more forgiving, of each other's foibles. And so that's what we did. I found another place to live. It was very collaborative. My husband and I went house hunting, and we found me a place. I moved out. Mm-hmm. And that was 6 years ago, and it's worked so well that my friends encouraged me to write a book, and I did.
So to be clear here, he's living in one house and you're living in another.
That's right.
And you get together for dates.
We do.
Is that right?
We do. It's fabulous, and it's. I think it's similar to what Audrey was saying, in terms of the fact that you are much more intentional with your time together. You don't take the other person for granted
the
way you do when you see them day in and day out. And so we are much better at being together when we are together, and we're together a lot. We actually see each other 6 days a week. There's only 1 day a week that we don't see each other at all, and the other days either he's coming over for dinner or we're spending the night at each other's house. So it's still very much a dynamic relationship. We're very married. We're totally monogamous. But we just, like I say, we have this space so that we're just not getting on each other's nerves to the same extent that we had been.
Dr. Karam, do you look at this and say, well, this is a creative solution, and what does it matter because the marriage survived? Or do you look at this and say, either you're in the same house or you're not, and what's his marriage really made of?
Well, every couple is different, and clearly, Lisa and her husband have cleared upon boundaries, transparency, good communication in that what they're doing is agreed upon and they're both bought in. But reflecting on a couple of these stories we've heard, every couple needs a balance between what I call me time and we time. If all of your happiness, if you're the partner at this midlife, at this empty nest phase, and you feel like all of your partner's happiness rises and falls with you, they have no outside interest or passions, their kids have launched, and now they're solely focused on you, that's a lot of pressure for any partner or any
Sure
relationship.
is.
So every relationship, and it looks in different balance and different depending on the couple, needs this right fit between me time and we time. And the me time could be work, it could be hobbies or passions, things that bring you fulfillment that you need support from your partner, but you don't necessarily need for them to be intricately involved in. So some couples need more of that than others. And this idea, other thing, we were talking about of this existing compatibilities used to be a lot of the type of work I do in marriage therapy and in working with couples and training clinicians used to be problem solving and communications. Well, some problems are not solvable. Things that happened years ago, things that are just incompatibilities in, as Lisa was saying, in just between the way her and her husband are wired. So successful couples learn to solve what's solvable, which really the research indicates is really only about 31% of marital issues or pair bond issues are actually solvable. The majority, 69%, are really what we call unsolvable problems or perpetual issues that when you can't solve it, they take acceptance and tolerance. So sometimes when you decide to hang in there in a marriage, you instead of thinking about telling your partner to change how they can change, you kind of work on what you can do yourself and to figure out what's solvable and what's not, and then move towards acceptance or tolerance. And I imagine in your living arrangement that you have now, you are intentional, as you said, in your time, and I can imagine you have learned to tolerate and be accepting of a lot of these core incompatibilities that you talk about.
I'm gonna add something as I hear from the audience this morning. So I've been asking you how you've adjusted to the empty house and the empty nest. Has it put pressure on your marriage? Have you figured out how to navigate this? Did you hear what Lisa's setup is? What do you think of the idea of remaining married but living in two separate places? I mean, would that resolve some of the incompatibilities that you experience with your partner? How does that sound to you? 651-227-6000. 800-242-2828. You can tell me about it on Twitter. You can go to the Daily Circuit page and click on the Hour Show to comment. Steph, what are we hearing there?
Michael says, I joke that my wife would be smart to divorce me after 32 years, but she's starting a new career, so it would be hard. And Carol says, we love our empty nest. Never been happier. We're back to being best friends.
Wow. Well, that's good. To Pat in White Bear Lake. Hi, Pat. How did this work for you?
Hi. Well, I was in my early 20s when I married my husband, who was in his mid-20s. He had full custody of 3 children, 3, 4, and 5 years old.
Wow.
So we were never alone until the children went off to college. And we had a lot of ups and downs during that time. We had gotten a lot of counseling, and I was really looking forward to what will life be like alone. And, yeah, we did navigate that, and there were a lot of bumps, but we had so many common interests. He was always my best friend. And so, we were on our own in our early 40s, and our kids are now still raising their children. But it's been a great ride. And is it easy? No. Do you make a commitment every day? Yes. And we've got 40 years of marriage under us.
Boy, congratulations.
Yeah.
Yes, if I could jump in there,
ahead.
this caller makes important points. People think the longer you're married, the easier it is. That's not true. Any relationship takes work. It's not like it's these skills. You learn them, communication, they're just there. You have to keep practicing and refining them. And what got you together doesn't necessarily keep you together. She also brings up the essential part that we found out that kind of makes the masters of marriage, separates them from the disasters, if you will, which is this idea of the friendship component. More than anything else, more than the night nice trips, even the sexual connection. The enduring part of the relationship is the friendship. And just like you would with your friend, you stay up to date with their world. You understand what's important to them, even if you're not there with them doing those things, how they react and change, and they do the same for you. So the friendship component in these empty nest marriage, that really predicts if you've stayed up to date, knowledge of your partner's world, you're going to have a shot at really enjoying and actually thriving in these empty nest years.
Danielle says online, my friends and I think the dream scenario is stay committed by having 5 days together and a day off. Lisa, I don't know, they're moving closer to your model there.
Yeah, I think that this arrangement that Emil and I have has become a phenomenon with an acronym. The acronym is LAT, L-A-T, and it's called Living Apart Together. And it's been getting a lot of media coverage in the last year or so. And I think every couple has their own way of working it out, and every couple has their own reasons for making a move like this. Sometimes it's people having jobs in different areas. Sometimes it's older couples who come together later in life, and they've already got, each of them has their own space, their own home that they love, and they don't want to give it up.
Yeah.
In our case, it was we were headed for divorce, and this was a way to avoid that. It's something that I hadn't really known about or thought about, but it became the salvation of our marriage. And I wrote the book, Living Happily Ever After, separately in the hopes that other people who feel like their only choices are either to live with this guy who's driving you crazy or to get divorced, that they know that there's another option to consider. It won't work for everybody, but I think it could really help a lot of couples preserve what's so precious in their relationship and preserve their family.
Yeah.
That was a big deal for us, the idea of getting a divorce and just watching the family fall apart and just all of the awkward interactions and relationships that ensue from divorce was really just anathema for us. And so,
Lisa, I was interested in, your kids were probably in the end happy that the marriage survived, but but I do wonder, will you be interested to see how they choose their own partners, and are they married yet? Any of your kids?
One of them is married. Our oldest one is married, and actually is interesting because she got engaged to her husband right at the time when Emil and I had decided to do this.
Huh.
So we moved separately in August, and their wedding was in December, and they've been married for almost 6 years now. They've got a great marriage. The other two both have long-term relationships. But I will say that I think, well, first of all, each of the girls wrote a chapter in my book saying what the whole experience was like from their point of view, both being in the marriage with all of us in the one home and how it's been since we've been living separately. But the other thing that I wanted to say is that they have all become very conscious about being in relationship as a result of this, and they have found what we have done to be very inspiring to them.
That's good to know. Steph from the Daily Circuit page.
I'm sorry, I didn't have my mic on. TJ says, we've been married for 21 years and we are nearly empty nesters and have been loving increasingly spending time doing what we want to do. And also Jen wrote in that she went on vacation with her husband for the first time in 10 years. And she says, I was worried we won't have anything to talk about. We have two small children. Most of our daily conversations are detail oriented. Who will pick up the kids? Who will drop off the kids? What are we making for a meal? She says, we found out we still really like each other. The love is always there, but the like is just as important.
Good. They're kind of practicing the empty nest, right? Whenever that happens. To Shannon in St. Paul. Hi, Shannon.
Hi, good morning.
Hi.
I just, we're on our second year of empty nesting, and I would hope we're on the working towards the mastery side of marriage. We've almost been married 30 years and very happy and had a good first couple years of empty nesting. But I just wanted to comment that there's so many other attentions that come when you're at the age point of empty nesting with aging parents. I count many peers of mine whose parents have died or gotten very ill during this part of time too. You know, if you're able to look at your kids and say they're happy and adjusting and making their own life, the empty nesting is an easier transition. But there's also these other pressures that come in right about that same time that really impact a marriage.
Yeah, Shannon, what a really good point. What do you find about that, Dr. Karam, with couples?
Yeah, we call what she's talking about kind of the sandwich generation, kind of sandwiched in between launching your own kids, but then kind of taking care of your aging parents. And obviously, as this baby boomer generation ages, we're going to have more of that. So many couples, they successfully launch their kids, but then they take on, again, this caretaking role in the sense of now they're putting all that energy, which they could be putting back into the marriage, to taking care of their parents. So there has to be a balance, again, between me time, we time, and between your obligations to your other family members and to the relationship. And I always tell people, it's like, if you're listening to this and you're approaching the empty nest, but you're not there yet, I mean, you don't want to wait till that child is dropped off at college, like millions of Americans have dropped off their kids over the last couple of weeks. You want to start having this dialogue proactively. You want to prioritize knowledge of your partner's world. You want to become curious about them again. One of the biggest things I see working with long-term couples is just lack of curiosity. They think they have everything figured out about their partner because they've been with them 20 or 30 years. But again, who you started out with is not necessarily the same person down the road. So you want to be curious, knowledge of your partner's world, and you want to start to be talking about not only your financial goals for your future, not only where you want to spend time, but what you want to be doing together, what that looks like. These rituals of connection, marital research has kind of distilled it down to magic 15 minutes a day. It's departure in the morning, how you connect verbally and non-verbally with your partner. It's reunion at the end of the day. These are these micro moments that if you establish rituals of connection, that the friendship component is there. So you're not having to do all this catch-up work heading towards the empty nest. You could be great co-parents, but if you have not prioritized a relationship, if you've not had what I call date night or protected time, it's harder to get into the zone of doing it. Like the caller was saying, you go and you wonder if I'm going to have anything to talk about with my partner. Versus if you're actively nurturing this and stoking the friendship component of the relationship, you're not going to have feeling like you're next to a stranger when you drop your kids off for college.
Dr. Eli Karam is one of our guests as we talk about that time in your partnership or your marriage where you're transitioning, the kids are off to careers or college, and now it's you two again. And we're discussing that's a perilous time in a relationship because we're seeing a trend of gray divorce. More couples, I think Dr. Karam said 1 in 4 getting divorced over the age of 50. This is a factor in some of those divorces. Lisa Stossel went through this, and she wrote a book about it called Living Happily Ever After Separately, and tells us this morning that a number of couples are actually doing it that way as well. I'm interested in what this was like or whether you're dreading this time in your relationship. How about that idea of remaining married, remaining together in the relationship, but living separately? Can you imagine that? How's that look? 800-242-2828, 651-227-6000. I'm on Twitter at CarrieMPR. Steph Curtis at the Daily Circuit page. Hi, Steph.
Hi. Mindy says, the part of the empty nest that is difficult for me is not being alone with my husband. We certainly have plenty to do, and we enjoy spending time with each other. No problems there. The hardest part is missing the wonderful people that are my children and missing the time spent with them.
Okay, to the phones to Don in Bemidji. Don, I understand you're doing this living separately thing.
Yeah, my wife's got a job in Fargo. I'm from Bemidji. And that was just because she wanted to improve her situation. So she moved away to Fargo for like 4 years. And when she was there, I re-entered school in southern Minnesota. So now that she's back in Bemidji, I'm living and going to school in Center City. And
really?
So it's just been kind of a moving on in our lives kind of thing that's led us to live separately. And it's amazing the way you settle into a new lifestyle.
Well, what's it been like for the relationship, though?
Well, I can't remember, one of the people talked about making time for each other, and when you come back for the weekends or when you visit, you know, I gave up golfing on weekends because that's the only time she was home.
Mm.
So if I needed to go golfing, I'd go out Wednesday night or, something like that. And we'd set aside time to be together because we were only together for a couple of days. And you understand the commitment and the idea that you have to enjoy each other's company when you're together.
Yeah.
So it works.
Lisa, I'm interested in what Dr. Karam said about remaining curious about your partner. Did you find that was refreshed in some way? Your partner's interests or email's interests became interesting again to you once you didn't see him every day.
Yeah, there's definitely been an element of that. I make it more my intention to ask him about what he's done when I see him. And as I say, we do see each other almost every day. So it's easy to keep up with what each other is doing. But the other thing that I wanted to mention is Dr. Karam talked about rituals of connection and just finding the things the shared interests and the things that really create a juicy bond between the husband and wife. And one of the great benefits of our arrangement, having more space, more living space, is that Emil and I first became interested in each other because we were both potters. We both worked with clay. And over the years, that had totally gone by the wayside. We've, raising children and having careers and whatnot. But we actually last year took my basement and converted it into a pottery studio. And it's been a fabulous way for the two of us to share something that we both really love, and it brings out a side of each of us and a side of our relationship that had been dormant for almost 30 years.
So now you're down there together working on the pottery?
Yep.
Oh, that's so public radio.
Yeah.
But it's cool, too. To the Daily Circuit page. Steph, what are we hearing?
Mindy says, after 20 years of marriage, my husband and I determined that we were no longer fulfilling the vow we had made to make the world a better place through our union. And this is how she describes it. She says, we decided to complete our commitment to each other as a married couple and divorce, but we've remained very good friends who continue to support each other in our dreams. And Jay says, 6 years of empty nest have been the hardest ever. 34 years, and I've never worried about my marriage more. Thanks for the show.
So, Dr. Karam, at what point, because you just said, don't wait until the day you drop off the kids. So, give us some advice here. At what point
people, like I said, you're planning retirement, you're planning your child's college fund very early on. It should be the same way about the relationship health. So, by doing that, you are prioritizing it in this protected time. I don't care how busy you are. I have two, tenure track position. I have two small children and lots of things. Every hour is scheduled. But I'll tell you what, the way I get through the week is I know, again, as Lisa was saying, being purposeful. I know the next time I'm going to see my wife. So in the sense of the protected time is blocked out. I know it's going to be a tough week, but Friday night we'll have childcare and we'll have 3 or 4 hours blocked out that gets me knowledge of my partner's world. It gets some type of shared experience. And the nice story about the pottery is it's this nice tangible product of this thing that brought them together, that still ties them together. So if you have some ritual connection that's specific to you and your partner, that's great. So you want to be doing that no matter how busy you are, no matter how active your kids are in after-school activities or sports. You want to be modeling. Also, it's so important. If you care, I work with a lot of these parents that say, well, our kids need us. Our kids need us. So they do need you, but they also need you to model what a healthy relationship is. That will be their blueprint. So I kind of tell these couples, you want your children to know how to prioritize a relationship. It's not to be in balance, to not just over-focus on the parenting. So actually what you're doing by nurturing the relationship, by doing this now, you're giving your children a good model. And many children go off, emerging adults go to college, and they're worried about this. It's this unspoken thing. They're worried about what are mom and dad going to do now that I'm not here? And in family therapy, we have what we call the function of the symptom, in the sense that a lot of times kids will act out subconsciously to draw their parents together because they're worried about their parents being able to make it without them. So the best thing you can do is nurture this protected time, prioritize the couple. Do not wait. Be doing it consistently throughout your marriage, no matter how old your children are. It helps you as the couple, and it sends a great message to your kids.
Let's hear from Mary Jane in Minneapolis. Mary Jane, how is this working in your household?
Well, my husband and I have been together for almost 40 years.
Wow.
But for the last almost 5.5, I've lived in Minneapolis, and he's lived in upstate New York. Those are our primary residences.
Huh.
And it has worked really well. When we get together, it's a honeymoon. And the hardest part about it is that other people don't get it. And we finally got to the point of just saying, okay, fine, we get it. It works for us. We're not explaining ourselves anymore.
Because your friends were like, what is this, right?
Not so much friends. I mean, a lot of our friends are professionals also, and have, for professional reasons, lived apart during parts of their lives and then moved back together. So it's not so much friends as it's family who are like, are you two still together? And we're like, yeah, we are. It's okay. It's fine. We show up for family events and weddings and everything together.
That's funny.
But they don't quite get it.
Right.
And now my husband is finishing a project for Cornell University at the end of this year. He's going to move back here. And our major concern is how we reintegrate our lives when we're living in the same place.
Oh.
Because we have gotten used to having our separate space. This has been the longest period of living together apart. But,
what happens?
You know, after 40 years and working multiple things out, I think we figured out how to work things out.
I think so, too. I mean, the marriage has clearly survived a lot of transition. Lisa, do you think you could live with your husband again if you had to? And who knows, that day could come.
Yeah, and you know, that's a very good question, and it's one that comes up a lot. And my answer is, you know, I'm sure we could if we had to. We did it for 23 years. But in terms of planning for the future, we're really just taking it, you know, one day, 1 month, 1 year at a time, and knowing that this is working well for us now. You know, depending on what circumstances come down the pike in the future, we'll deal with it one way or another. But right now, this is really growing our relationship, and it's definitely what's keeping the marriage strong.
I'm really glad you could be with us to talk to us about this. This is interesting, and bravo for you for making it work, Lisa. Thanks.
Thank you, Carrie.
Lisa Stossel's book is called Living Happily Ever After Separately. Dr. Karam, thank you. Good to have your view on this.
Hey, thank you. I'm a fan of your show, and nice to be a part of it.
Thank you. Good to have you with us. And Steph from the Daily Circuit page.
Chloe says, my son leaving for college for out of town was not a problem for me. We rarely saw him and only heard from him when he needed something like money. But I guess I thought he'd be back someday. However, when he graduated and got a job in Los Angeles, it hit me that he was really grown up and gone. When he packed his essential belongings in the car and pulled out of our driveway, I felt profound sadness. I really miss him, although he hadn't been around for 4 years. Sorry to hear that, Chloe.
Hey, Steph, tomorrow on Screen Time, and this is the time that we talk about film every week on the Daily Circuit, you're going to have your favorite films about college.
I thought we were going to talk about